Okay, I realize I'm a little bit overdue on doing a video on how to keep, maintain, and create your heat on a small truck mount like the 370. And I got people asking me all the time, busting my balls by why did I buy a 370? How can a Vortex, Aerotex guy go down in size so much? Well, for one thing, I needed a low top 1-ton roof, or a low roof 1-ton van to be able to get in my garage, keep it from freezing here on the high chaparral, which it certainly freezes for, I don't know, 4 months out of the year. And every other truck mount is going to come to at least here, if not here. And you can see I keep 3 vacuums, an Oric, a Kirby, my little Hoover. I keep my 10-inch CRB, spotting bag, my filter here, all my tools and grout brushes, and you can see all this crap. And if I didn't have that space there, I wouldn't have any room back here. Tarps, tile and grout tools, upholstery tools, rags, bonnets. Right now I got Trinity in there. Sometimes it's a 175. Grout wand, rotor extractor. Just ran out of room. Plus plenty of chemicals there. The 370, biggest company in the industry. This unit was already broken in with 50 hours. Got 1,022 on it now. So anyhow, this is my second job of the day. So what I'm going to do, I haven't hooked up anything yet. I'm going to hook up the water, and I will take out my 2.5-inch lead hose, hook it to the Devastator, which has a 2.5-inch port on the back. And on this job here, I'm going to run another 50 of 2.5. But while I'm setting up, beyond hooking up that hose, I'm going to run her at full capacity and block off the vac port with a funnel. You don't want to block it off 100%. It puts too much strain on the motor and you'll blow up your little Kohler 20 horse. So while I'm running the pressure hose and mixing up my pre-spray, it's basically heating up the heat exchanger, which, granted, is not the biggest heat exchanger in the industry. And you want to, essentially, that's going to take 10-15 minutes to do all that. Pre-spray your average house. And by the time you're done spraying, with your temperature on high, that water is going to be extremely hot in there. On the gauge, it'll probably show 270 or something. And nobody wants to clean at 270. It's not going to sustain that. But I will, as I start cleaning and hook up the hose in the house, I'll give it another couple minutes with the hose blocked off, either with a wand, leaning on something capped off or whatever. Just a couple minutes to get that thing nice and cooking. And once it's there, then I'll show you once I'm inside cleaning what the next step of the routine is. But let me get going here. Water tank. I didn't want to give up that space either. So here's my supply line. I keep a screen in there to keep the bugs and leaves that are often in people's plumbing out. Then I put a ball valve on the end. These are little cheapy $5 Ace Hardware specials, just so I can turn it off and on from this end of the hose and not worry about getting my dungarees wet. You'll notice that the throttle's out. I virtually never turn that throttle all the way in. These little air-cooled motors are much happier starting at, I'd say, 85-90% at full throttle, and certainly much happier being shut off that way. You wind it all the way down, and unless you run the thing for forever, it's gonna ka-kunk and backfire and just not be happy. Get a lot more life out of these motors this way. So this is the second job of the day. No choke, everything's turned off. Let's see how she starts. I'm going. I'm going to get it off the grass here so I don't burn their lawn a little bit. And let's look at the lift. So virtually nothing because there's no back pressure on it. And remember, the bimba valve, which diverts the heat exchanger, will not do so unless you put it under pressure, back pressure, hence the funnel. So let's throw that in and watch what that gauge does. Alright, so you can see it gets up there, I don't know, 758. And if we were to cap it off, it would get up to 15. And let me show you something here. Let me turn this off real quick. I saw somebody asking how you adjust this. You want to put 50 feet of hose on, cap it off, and loosen up this secondary lock bolt and put enough pressure on here. This is your vacuum relief valve, and you can see you're gonna, here at elevation, I'm at 4,800 feet. Remember, these things are set to the vacuum lift at whatever Prescott, Arizona is. But I had to add this many, whatever that is, 3/4 of an inch of washers to get it at basically 14 inches of lift. They come out of the factory, I think, with just one washer. And it's not going to operate once you have all your hose on. I use flash cuffs, which leak a little tiny bit, but that's okay. It's going to leak somewhere. You can't run capped off all the time, so it's either going to leak here or in your vacuum hose. Doesn't matter. But again, put 50 feet of hose on, cap it off, and then loosen this guy. Sorry, you have to take the cotter pin out to add your washers, if need be, depending on your elevation. Tighten her up, get it to 14 inches on the 370, and you're good to go. Capped off, we'll go 100%. That's actually a little high, but again, remember, I'm using flash cuffs, which will cause a little bit of leaking, and I'll show you in a minute what it looks like with I think I'll have 120 feet out on this job. 4 bedrooms, kind of a large living room, and a 8x10 wool rug. On the trigger, pretty heavy, and the heater. So it got up there. Now as I put on the hose, vacuum hose, put up the wand, give it a little more restriction for whatever, another 3 or 4 minutes maybe. It's gonna get pegged up there. That's a perfect starting point. Start the cleaning process, because your heat exchanger is just good and cooking. Got it all hooked up, hose is capped off inside the house, and she is hot. Now let's go show how to wand this thing, keep the heat sustained. The main influential trick to keeping your heat sustained. I'm going to work across this wall here, which is, I don't know, probably 12 feet across from the sofa over the fireplace. And I'm going to break that down into 2 areas. Rather than go all the way across in a 4-foot long stroke, I'll cut it down to, 5 or 6. If the room were any wider, I would cut it down to 4. And what I mean by cutting it down is go over 4 or 5 feet, and then go back and do your dry stroke. And then move over and do 4 or 5 feet, go back and do your dry stroke. And that way, you're never draining the heat exchanger. There's always a surplus of hot, steamy water waiting for you. And for some people, that's going to take some learning, some rearranging, I guess you could say, of your cleaning habits. But with a smaller machine, that way you always got nice steamy water in the 200-degree range. With the Sapphire 370, I think the truck ought to come set up with 6 flow or 4 1.5 jets, create a bigger droplet, if you would, that has more punch. Everything happens quicker. With an 01 jet, besides being much easier to plug, it's more of a mist. And yes, half a number, whatever you want to call it, is significant. You could always test it. Put a 1 flow jet, run your finger under it, put a 1.5 or a 2, and you're going to feel a lot more impact. And that's what the carpet's feeling. Everything happens quicker. And while you would think lower flow overall would sustain better heat, it actually doesn't. You get more heat with a 6 or even an 8 flow if you're a little quicker about it. I was using an 8 flow on the Sapphire 12-inch. When Conway sent me this Devastator 12, he said, just try it with the 6, see what you think. And he does some internal jetting tricks, larger hose, larger orifices in the internals of the jet and whatnot, that a 6 feels like an 8. And using a little bit less water, not filling up the tank quite as often, and getting fantastic results. So I got to do this one-handed, so bear with me. And then sitting here talking, so the water in the lines cooled down a little bit. Here comes the hot water. Primarily, this is thick carpet, real thick quality nylon. Primarily spraying on the backstroke, a good amount of overlap. Letting off just before the end of the stroke so I don't leave that dreaded soapy puddle. I am running a rinse. This carpet had lots of pet stains and coffee stains and whatnot, so I put a lot of peroxide in the pre-spray, in which case you want to make sure you rinse that out. So, not the greatest color carpet to see the steam, but I think you're getting an idea. It's staying nice and hot. I think I'll do one more stroke over. And man, it's getting hot at my hand the longer I go. Do one more rinse there. It's the main step down area. Okay. Now my dry stroke, it's going to be an inch or so longer than the wet stroke, just to make sure I'm getting that little bit of end of the stroke puddle, as I call it, which can lead to a brown outline if you're not careful. Pretty common to see horizontal stripes going across the room if you got bad wanding technique and you leave too much of a puddle and you don't dry stroke. Okay, so now let's go over the next 6 feet. Definitely getting some great heat. I got this little gap right here between the hose cuff and the insulator grip, which inadvertently tells me how hot the water's running, and it is hot. And I don't know, it's probably low 60s today weather-wise, so outside ambient temperature is not influencing this unit. Obviously, all truck mounts run hotter in the summer, particularly air-cooled motor slide-ins. You got hot air coming in that work off a heat exchanger. So, I don't know if you're paying attention to that steam, but the longer I went on this 6-foot width, actually the hotter it was getting, which is what you want. If you're not set up correctly, not letting the truck heat up, you'll actually drain that heat exchanger and the water will go cool on you before you can ever build it back up. Boy, this one-handed wanding is fun. Alright, let me put the camera down so you can get a better idea of the steam it's creating. Devastator 12, 1.5 inch, 15-foot whip hose that goes to a tapered 2-inch end, 2-inch, 50 feet out to another 50 feet of 2.5. I think that's the optimum, perfectly balanced system for the 370. Get fantastic heat, incredible suction, and the thing is just a owner-operator residential monster, I dare say. But if you're wanding convention centers and greasy restaurants all night and sending out techs who suck at wanding. You probably want to look at the bigger machine. But for what I'm doing here on the High Chaparral, low noise, great room left in the truck. I couldn't be happier. See how happy she is when you shut her down that way. And I don't know if you noticed, but it was, I don't know, 2:15 or something. And cleaning in that fashion on the normal temperature, it's actually getting kind of chilly today. You'll see it go between like 195, 210, shorter strokes. And that's a ton of heat. Go sit in a 105-degree hot tub. Tell me how long you can take that. Anyhow, ask questions below. Make sure to subscribe. Visit me on the world's greatest carpet cleaning forum, mikeysboard.com. If you got more questions about this truck mount or any truck mount, we got service manuals, thousands of experienced users, and just the best place in the world to discuss carpet cleaning on the internet. All right. Have a good weekend.